Kami mohon perhatian hadirin, acara Studium Generale akan segera dimulai. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Pada hari ini, Rabu 13 November 2024, kita akan mengikuti Studium Generale bersama co-founder and CEO EduBeyond, Bapak Miklos Sunario, dengan topik AI untuk Transformasi Pendidikan, Tantangan dan Peluangnya bagi Generasi Emas di Masa Depan. Acara hari ini akan diawali dengan menyanyikan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin dimohon berdiri.
Indonesia, tanah airku, tanah tumpah darahku. Di sanalah aku berdiri, jadi pandu ibuku. Indonesia, kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita berseru, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya, untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
Hadirin disilakan duduk kembali. Selanjutnya, kita akan mengikuti penyampaian sambutan dari Rektor Institut Teknologi Bandung yang sekaligus akan membuka acara pada hari ini. Kami silakan dengan hormat Profesor Reini Wirahadikusuma, PhD.
Baik, selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ini yakin gak mau pindah depan nih? Nanti ada hadiahnya loh. Ya udah, nggak apa-apa, di belakang juga asalkan tetap menyimak ya. Makasih, yang penting sudah mau hadir, meringankan langkah. Jadi saya biasanya tidak membuka acara ini, gitu ya. Nah, ITB ini punya mata kuliah Studium Generale namanya. Jadi kawan-kawan pada pagi hari ini mengambil kredit dan betul-betul mengobservasi, mengambil pelajaran dari pertemuan setiap minggu untuk topik yang beragam, yang update gitu ya. Jadi kalau dulu kuliah Studium Generale itu biasanya isinya menteri gitu ya Bu ya, pejabat-pejabat gitu. Nah sekarang saya pikir kalau yang menteri itu di YouTube juga banyak ya gitu. Kita ingin lebih kekinian ya, lebih relevan terhadap interest dari mahasiswa-mahasiswa ITB yang Gen Z ini gitu. Jadi isinya lebih sedikit kita desain ke arah sana. Semoga sesuai dan bermanfaat. Baik, kita pada pagi hari ini kedatangan kawan Anda semua ya. Ini kawan namanya Mas Miklos Sunario. Beliau datang dari Amerika Serikat khusus untuk bertemu dengan kawan-kawannya di Institut Teknik Bandung. Beliau kesini ini memang saya yang kontak ya, saya cari-cari gitu, karena saya suatu hari menemui informasi bahwa ada seorang generasi muda Indonesia yang kok mirip sama anak-anak ITB gitu ya. Jadi saya tuh pertama melihatnya seperti anak-anak yang saya temui ya, mahasiswa-mahasiswa ITB sama. Cuman barangkali kesempatannya, aksesnya itu sedikit berbeda ya, kita semua punya background dan kesempatan yang berbeda-beda. Tetapi saya melihat ada suatu kesamaan keinginan untuk berkontribusi untuk bangsa gitu ya. Jadi saya ingin mengenalkan Mas Miklos ini ke kawan-kawan ITB, dan kawan-kawan ITB juga bisa punya teman baru, network Miklos ya, begitu kira-kira maknanya. Nah, di kesempatan yang langka ini ya, saya ingin menyampaikan. Jadi ITB ini dalam beberapa bulan terakhir sama ya, seluruh dunia semua higher education itu mempelajari apa AI, apa yang bisa kita ambil. Tentu di awal, jadi akhir tahun ya, mungkin mulai AI ini mengejutkan kita semua. Tentu reaksinya ada yang langsung melarang ya, tidak boleh nyontek pakai AI bla bla bla. Tapi dalam waktu sebulan 2 bulan juga kita semua sadar tidak mungkin. Kita harus mengembrace ya, kita harus mengembrace, bahkan kita harus mempelajari secepat-cepatnya sehingga kita dapat mengerti apa manfaatnya, apa etikanya, apa dampak sosialnya terhadap masalah kemanusiaan, dan apa benefitnya. Jadi ITB secara internal membangun satgas yang berisi dosen, teknik, mahasiswa untuk bagaimana memanfaatkan ini untuk ITB. Tentu semua tidak ada yang tahu bagaimana, karena setiap berapa bulan juga berubah-berubah ya, berubah-berubah. Jadi kita harus memperluas komunitas ini. Jadi bagi mahasiswa yang punya ketertarikan lebih dan ada kepedulian mengenai masa depan AI dan dampaknya, silakan menghubungi Ibu Alia ya, yang Bu Alia aja ya, Bu Alia, pokoknya udah kena Bu Alia lagi ya, banyak ininya itu ibadah ya Bu ya. Oke, makasih ya Bu Alia atas perkenannya. Nah, nanti kita terus membuat komunitas yang besar. Nah, jadi kami ingin menurture ITB ya. Jadi ITB itu semua, dosen, mahasiswa, ya, apalagi dosen. Mohon mahasiswa itu lebih berempati ya kepada kami. Karena kami ini generasi jadul yang lebih sulit lagi untuk berubah. Lebih sulit untuk memahami hal-hal yang baru, teknologi tinggi ini gitu ya. Anda mah gampang ya, jauh lebih gampang daripada kami untuk mengembrace teknologi ini. Sementara kami harus membimbing Anda. Nah, jadi mohon berempati, kita bersama-sama ya, kita maju. Nah, itu saya mau share aja bahwa kemana arahnya? Oh, ke sini ya. Jadi ITB itu sangat antusias terhadap kinerja research dan pengabdian masyarakatnya. Ya. Jadi yang membedakan universitas average dengan yang kita mau unggul itu adalah kecintaannya kepada ilmu. Nah, jadi pusat AI udah lama ada di ITB. Tahun berapa Mas Utama pusat AI itu? Udah lama lah, sebelumnya Pak Bambang Rianto, Bu Ayu ya, udah lama. Tetapi kan perkembangannya dulu tidak eksponensial. Tapi ITB sudah lama. Nah, akhir-akhir ini tentu kawan-kawan di pusat AI ini semakin banyak tantangannya dan harus memperluas komunitasnya. Bukan semata IFSTI ya, ini harus semua kita turun tangan. Dan itu sudah kita lakukan dan harus diperkuat. Kemudian apalagi, ini udah saya klik. Emang gitu ya, klikin situ dah. Nah ya, nah ITB juga menjadi bagian dari upaya nasional. Ya tentu bukan saya, ada ahli-ahlinya nih di ITB ya. Bu Ayu, Pak Bambang dan lain-lainnya itu ITB itu dalam membentuk Renstra nasional tuh ITB selalu ikut, ya kita adalah active participant. Tetapi negara kita Renstranya ini baru buku ya, belum ada tindak lanjutnya nih ya, belum bukannya tidak. Jadi kita itu harus optimis ya, sabar. Selanjutnya, nah ini juga di berbagai acara AI pasti ITB dipanggil. Ya yang berangkat kawan-kawan saya. Ya, ada Bu Alia juga di sini terakhir sekitar sebulan yang lalu. Saya juga menghadiri undangan banyak untuk berbicara di acara-acara AI in Education. Orang ingin tahu negara seperti Indonesia khususnya ITB apa yang dilakukan. Ya, lanjut. Nah, banyak researchnya. Nanti kalau tertarik coba ke Pak Utama. Ini Pak Utama ada di sini duduk di depan. Ya, ini sebagian aja yang dilakukan beliau dan kawan-kawan. Miscellaneous project-nya ya lumayan lah ITB ini, lumayan banget ya. Untuk Indonesia sih lumayan banget dengan segala keterbatasan kita. Tapi kita bisa berbuat lebih banyak lagi. Kemudian nah, ini ya AI in curriculum, teaching learning, capacity building and innovation, inisiatif-inisiatif yang sudah kita lakukan secara internal. Dan bukan hanya internal, kita juga mengajak universitas lain karena kita harus sama-sama. Ya, kurikulum, tadi saya bangga banget ya ngomong kurikulum ini. Karena bikin kurikulum 2024 ini susah ya. Suatu jam yang dari puluhan tahun ya. Secara struktural fundamentalnya aja berbeda. Tapi insya Allah ini untuk kebutuhan masa depan. Kita sudah melakukan sosialisasi dan mohon mahasiswa memberi masukan ya lewat Pak Arief atau Ditmawa ya mengenai apa yang harus kita tambahkan. Ya, challenges-nya dan sebagainya. Nah ini, jadi ITB itu ingin jadi hub for knowledge, collaboration, and leadership in the AI era, paling tidak buat Indonesia. Kita merasa ini adalah enabler. Nah ini di perkuliahan juga kita sudah melakukan kerja nyata ya bahwa bagaimana ini mau diterapkan di kuliah-kuliah di kurikulum 2024. Sudah ada uji coba dan satgasnya mungkin akhir tahun akan membuat laporan what to do next gitu kira-kira. Ya. Nah ini sosialisasi, kita ingin memberikan lebih banyak jalur mahasiswa carve your own dreams katanya, carve your own dreams tuh ya, dream path, carve your own dream path. Ya. Menurut saya tidak klise, emang iya pengennya itu. Ya. Gimana caranya itu yang kita perbaiki terus. Demikian yang ingin saya sampaikan. Jadi ITB urusan AI ini secara teknisnya tanggung jawab Anda ya, mahasiswa temenan sama siapapun. Tugas kami membuat academic atmosphere yang memungkinkan pertemuan ide, ngobrol, kegiatan-kegiatan kemahasiswaan yang banyak. ITB itu kegiatan mahasiswanya banyak banget, tanya Pak Epin. Ya, 8.000 apa ya tanda tangannya itu loh. Izin kegiatan itu 8.000, juaranya hampir 3.000. Juara ini, juara itu. Jadi ya maaf kalau nggak ada di news ya, karena ada 3.000 ngetiknya juga apa bikin beritanya juga cannot keep up ya. Tetapi itulah kampus ini sangat dinamis. Nah, disitulah yang terus kita jaga, bukan hanya saja di antara mahasiswa, dosen juga harus lebih sering Bu Desi, lebih sering ketemu kita ini, jangan sibuk di kotak masing-masing dan juga dengan tendik dan kita semua secara warga ITB lebih engagement komunitasnya ini harus ditingkatkan. Ya, kalau ketemu dosen menyapa, nggak kenal juga pasti dia jawab gitu ya. Jadi timbulkan, jaga, tumbuhkan suasana engagement komunitas di kampus kita ini, empat kampus semuanya. Demikian saya terima kasih atas waktunya untuk mendengarkan. Saya 2 bulan lagi ini bahkan Pilrek itu 30 November akan ada nama baru. Ya, jadi optimis ya, ITB ini keren banget. tapi tantangan kita terus meningkat. Demikian, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sambil nunggu pasang video yang 3 menit tadi, saya mau kasih lihat. Ini yang paling membanggakan buat kita.
Banyak terumbu karang. Ini. Ah, ini Pak, udah ada ikan ini. Udah banyak ini. Ini. Udah banyak ikan. Bapak mau lihat, Pak? Ini di sini banyak ikan, Pak. Ini. Udah banyak ikan. Udah banyak ikan. Iya. Kedeteksinya udah banyak. Ini di kedalaman 1,4. Dalamnya 3,4.
Terima kasih atas bantuan yang telah diberikan oleh para donatur melalui kerjasama antara ITB dan Kemendes untuk Desa Aimuli.
Saya sendiri senang, bangga karena melihat air, debit air yang sementara ditarik pakai alat untuk ditampung di tempat yang lebih tinggi dan sudah alirkan ke wilayah masyarakat. Debit airnya cukup lumayan, memuaskan untuk bisa dimanfaatkan oleh masyarakat saya.
Ini dia, yang ini benar. Karena ada kotor di sini. Aduh, tidak bersih kotor ini.
Terima kasih banyak atas segala dedikasi Bapak dosen, sehingga masyarakat kami banyak yang terbantu. Air sudah dekat sekarang, kami sudah terbantu, kami sudah segar dan sehat selalu. Terima kasih banyak ITB.
Hadirin yang kami hormati, kita akan memasuki acara utama pada hari ini, yaitu Studium Generale, yang akan dipandu oleh moderator, yaitu Bapak Nugraha Priya Utama STMA PhD. Beliau adalah dosen di Sekolah Teknik Elektro dan Informatika dengan kelompok keahlian informatika. Kepada Bapak Nugraha Priya Utama PhD, kami silakan.
Tes. Oke. Selamat pagi ITB. Ini biasanya kalau stadium general karena pakai biasanya sambil mengerjakan sesuatu ya. Saya ingin suasana pagi ini supaya fokus. Saya ingin kalau saya panggil ITB, tolong mahasiswa-mahasiswa teriak ya, ITB. Seperti oke ya? Siap? Ya, jadi supaya kita fokus. Baik. ITB. Kurang lah, kurang. Sekali lagi. Sekali lagi, ayo. Jangan malu-malu. Yang sambil main komputer atau ngetik, saya tahu saya dulu pernah mahasiswa, hal-hal seperti ini sangat biasa terjadi. Ayo tolong ya, kita fokus ya. ITB. Oke, terima kasih. Oke ya, saya mulai saja. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Selamat pagi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi rekan-rekan mahasiswa, Ibu Rektor, Pak Wijaya, Pak Agus Sunario, Miklos. Thank you so much dan Bapak-Bapak Ibu sekalian di sini dan terutama ya rekan-rekan mahasiswa. Perkenalkan saya Nugraha Bria Utama, tadi sudah diperkenalkan. Kebetulan saya dosen di Teknik Informatika saat ini. Dan juga saya Ketua Pusat AI ITB, jadi sedikit relevan lah. Saya menjadi moderator Miklos Sunario, the very well known, humble, a young scholar from Indonesia. So hopefully we can get something from him. We can learn, many things from it also, and then we can somehow collaborate and do something together to help and to focus for the brighter future. Oke ya. Nah ini terima kasih yang pertama sudah datang di Stadium General. Ini kodenya masih sama nggak ya? KU-4078 masih sama nggak? Sama ya, oke ya. Ini judulnya hari ini AI untuk Transformasi Pendidikan, Tantangan dan Peluangnya bagi Generasi Emas di Masa Depan. Ya, kita sudah ada Miklos di sini. Ini sedikit pembukaan sebetulnya bahwa di era digital ini kita semua menyaksikan bagaimana teknologi khususnya AI ya itu telah merambah ke berbagai aspek kehidupan. Nah, salah satunya adalah sektor pendidikan. Ya. Nah, AI ini tidak hanya menawarkan cara baru dalam mengelola pembelajaran, tetapi juga membuka peluang besar untuk menciptakan pengalaman belajar yang lebih personal dan inklusif. Ya, jadi namun, nah ini ada namunnya, di balik peluang tersebut terdapat tantangan-tantangan yang tidak bisa kita abaikan, seperti kesenjangan akses teknologi, privasi data, serta peran guru atau dosen seperti saya yang semakin berubah. Nah di sini hari ini kita mendapatkan kehormatan ya, ada Miklos Sunario. Kita akan mendalami bagaimana AI itu dapat membantu ya mempersiapkan generasi emas di masa depan. Ya, dan juga kita akan membahas sedikit bagaimana kita bisa mengatasi tantangan-tantangan ini agar transformasi berbasis AI ya dapat memberikan manfaat yang maksimal bagi semua pihak. Ya ini sedikit maaf ya kurikulum vitae dari Miklos tidak saya bacakan secara langsung Miklos ya, bisa dibaca oleh rekan-rekan sekalian, sangat-sangat inspiratif dan sekali lagi usianya tidak berbeda jauh dengan kalian, jadi artinya mudah-mudahan kalian tumbuh semangat bahwa kita kalau berkolaborasi mendapatkan ekosistem yang tepat kita bisa seperti Miklos, kasarnya seperti itu. Oke ya. Nah sebelum kita mulai sesi utama, izinkan saya menjelaskan sedikit mengenai alur acara hari ini. Ya, jadi setelah pemaparan dari narasumber dari Miklos, lebih kurang 45 menit 1 jam Miklos ya. Kita akan melanjutkan dengan sesi tanya jawab interaktif. Ya, jadi bagi peserta baik yang hadir secara langsung maupun Zoom ya melalui Zoom atau YouTube Live, betul ya? Itu silahkan siapkan pertanyaan Anda, lalu tanpa berlama-lama saya persilahkan Miklos Sunario untuk memulai pemaparannya. Aplaus buat Miklos.
Selamat pagi ITB. Perkenalkan nama saya Miklos Sunario. Saya umur 21 tahun, jadi consider me one of you guys ya. I think that's the energy that I want to have today. aku akan sebisanya ngomong pakai bahasa Indonesia, tapi karena ya udah lumayan lama di sana ya, akan kadang-kadang campur pakai bahasa Inggris, akan mungkin kadang-kadang kalau ceritanya, kalau yang lebih lucu-lucu akan pakai campur-campuran juga, tapi the whole idea today is to share with you who I am, why I'm here today, what the history of AI has been to get to this point, and why this matters for you. Jadi hari ini saya akan bikin program saya setidak mungkin tidak teknikal, tapi senaratif dan se-engaging mungkin lah. Soalnya terus terang, I've been in mungkin berapa minggu lalu di sekolah saya sendiri, saya duduk di belakang sana tuh, di sana juga, watching somebody like me speak. So I know how boring it can be when some other person comes in and just talks about a lot of things that I don't really care about. So I want to make this as relevant and as engaging for all of you today. Oke, jadi mungkin aku mulai dengan introduce myself. My name is Miklos Sunario. Saya sekarang sudah 3 kali berbicara di PBB. Saya Direktur Talent Development di KU-4078, kebetulan tadi yang udah kerja sama dengan ITB sebelumnya ya. Saya adalah Canada's 23 under 23 dan saya juga sebuah fellow at the Amplify Institute in the United States of America, di mana saya advokasi untuk regulasi AI. Jadi So today's agenda, I think as I said before, is I want to quickly give a story as to why I'm here today. I want to talk a bit about AI's origins and how AI as a technology developed into what we have today in terms of LLMs and ChatGPT. I want to talk about how ChatGPT specifically has put that into a higher level and how that's begun, frankly, a global race for AI domination for the largest market in the next 20 years. And that's why it matters to all of us, all the different sectors that impacts, specifically also for myself, the sector of education. Terima kasih. So, a bit about myself. Mungkin aku di sini kasih cerita bentar. I started EduBeyond as a non-profit organization when I was in high school. Back when I was in grade 11, jadi itu sekitar SMA 2 ya, in Canada. And my mission was simple. Dulu waktu saya di COVID gitu, daripada melamun, nggak ngapa-ngapain, saya dengan teman-teman bilang, hey, why don't we just start a tutoring organization? Yang biasa loh, paling di sekolah-sekolah banyak juga yang tutoring organization kan. All we did was something very simple. Kita kasih les gratis di bahasa Inggris, di matematika, di science, maupun beberapa program spesifik dalam dunia programming dan juga artificial intelligence. Tapi yang mungkin itu one of the lucky things about me is me and my friends at the time, we decided, hey, why don't we just make this as big as possible through the power of just networking? So we just talked to a bunch of my friends, hey, kamu mau nggak sih ikut sebuah tutoring organization ini yang internasional namanya? Soalnya kan aku ada teman-teman di Indonesia, di Amerika, teman aku ada yang teman di Taiwan, di Australia. Ujung-ujungnya kita dapat satu nama EduBeyond ini yang dimana kita dengan secara bareng-bareng serve 6,000 students in 6 countries. So it was a bit of a fun time. But as a lot of high school organizations go, EduBeyond as a non-profit didn't exactly have a good ending. What happened was, waktu saya sekitar SMA 3 ya, teman-teman semua bilang, Mik, terima kasih untuk experience yang sangat seru ini. Saya udah biasa masuk kuliah saya, good luck ya. Best of luck to whatever is the future of EduBeyond. Jadi yang sebelumnya ada 6.000 murid, ada 6.000 volunteer, the number went way down. So at that point, I was faced with a choice, me and my co-founders. Do we lay EduBeyond to rest, thinking, wow, we've done a great job, 6,000 people, that's not bad. Or do we take that to the next level? And I think something that was also very apparent to me and my friends at the time is that at that point, we were also already quite interested in the more technical aspects of AI. It's something that we've been researching for fun at the time, but we wanted to really dive in on how we can use AI, the thing that we love doing, to solve the problem that we care most about at the time, which was education. So we decided to test run an idea that we had, gimana tuh AI bisa membantu di dunia pendidikan, and we joined this competition. Namanya itu Moonshot Platform Awards ya, yang kelihatan di sini. Nah, gak sangkanya walaupun kita awal-awalnya ya, to be honest kita nggak ada hope-nya apa-apa, kita cuma ada ide ini, kita bisa menang juara 1 di kompetisi ini. Dari sekitar 1.500 peserta dari 8 negara. Terima kasih semuanya, terima kasih. Dan karena kebetulan kita menang kompetisi ini, kita dapat opportunity untuk bisa pitch kita punya ide ke Deputi Sekjen PBB, yaitu Her Excellency Miss Amina Jane Muhammad. Dan dengan dukungan Miss Amina maupun juga dari Wakil Tetap Indonesia ke PT untuk PBB, saya dapat kehormatannya ya untuk bisa representasi Indonesia di UN Plenary Session at the UN Partnership Forum sebagai anak muda Indonesia termuda untuk bisa berbicara di UN Plenary Session ini. Nah, sejak itu sih, emang I think ever since then it's been, to be honest, a wild ride. There's been a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but I think with you guys for now I'll share more of the ups, ya. Including getting to win a couple more competitions, ranging from the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow, MIT Solve, Next AI, the Queen's Entrepreneurship Competition, as well as winning first place, the #1 AI company coming out of Berkeley with AIEB, and speaking 2 more times at the United Nations. Jadi, I'm very lucky now to also say I get to work closely with the UN. I'm one of the ITU specialists at AI in education. So for my second time at the UN, I got to speak about how EduBeyond as a product is the ideal SDG 4 product to scale education as a whole at the UN Science, Technology, and Innovation Forum. And finally, most recently, in May 2024, I also got to meet some of my personal heroes, like Sam Altman, Geoffrey Hinton, a couple of royalty from Britain, that was pretty cool, to speak at the AI for Good Summit in Geneva as well. Anyways, itu cukup untuk tentang saya. Now I think I want to get into the meat of this presentation, and I think this is what all of you come here today for, to learn. I want to talk about, quite simply, what AI is. What is AI? At its core, AI is a machine or a system that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. And AI needs to, I think, what is the word for it? Accomplish these 3 tasks efficiently. It needs to be able to learn, reason, or adapt autonomously. Mungkin aku bisa pakai example kali. Firstly, I think I want you to look at these 3 robots here, right? There's these three things. I think it's an analogy that kind of talks about AI in a good enough way. The first aspect of generalized learning is like this. Let's say for this robot, is able to perform in this hall. And it's learned how to perform at this hall. Let's say it learns how to walk. If you were to place this robot at a field outside, can it also do its task relatively well? Can it learn and adapt to its surroundings? An AI has to be able to, with context, apply its ability, is able to do its task beyond its one specific program. Second thing is reasoning. I think I want to show here that there's 2 roads that the AI is facing, a paved road and a rocky road. Without being programmed to, for example, take the paved road, can the AI reason and recognize that the paved road is better to walk through than a rocky road? And lastly, in terms of problem solving, I think the image I show here is that you see that the AI is about to cross a bridge, right? And let's imagine that that plank there doesn't exist. Can the AI come up with a solution to an existing problem with the resources it has at hand? So as a big idea, an AI has to be able to adapt to different contexts, reason through different possibilities, and solve different problems to generally be called an AI. Mungkin, to go to a previous slide, a couple of examples of AI that we can talk about. Maybe from Tesla is self-driving cars. It can adapt to different situations, learn from its user, so on and so forth. We also have your Netflix algorithm that learns a lot about you. And maybe anyone else want to say a couple of examples they have out of the top of their mind? Can I have beberapa example? You can just shout it out. Apa aja? Any sort of AI that you think. And I think the definition of AI is very, very wide, actually. ChatGPT, sure, that works. That's like the most prevalent, I would say, example of AI. So I think we have now a general baseline understanding of what AI is today. Then I would like now to talk a little bit about the history of AI and how, once again, AI technology came to be. How many of you here have watched the movie The Imitation Game? You know, starring Benedict Cumberbatch. It's about World War II. It's about a certain man called Alan Turing. Alan Turing, quite simply, founded a computer. He believed that at one day in the future, a machine's ability will be able to exhibit intelligent behavior indistinguishable from humans. And he created something called the Turing test. We'll come back to the Turing test at some point. And at the same time, long after the time of Alan Turing actually, in the early 1980s, researchers began experimenting with something that that reminded them of that was modeled after the human brain, something called neural networks. I think a lot of you, I won't explain the technicality of how neural networks work, but quite simply imagine it's the earliest inclination of how AI or machines can think at the time. And at the time, it used to be something called, the very, very first iteration of it is called supervised learning. I think supervised learning, I have to put it in I think many of you who are technical are not going to be happy for me to put it this way, but it's like brute force learning. It's like showing a machine the same image 1,000 times, and then it eventually getting it because of the amount of repetition you put into it. But specifically at that time, I think what I want you to think is that supervised learning had its limits at the time. Even though you were putting 1,000 images of some cat, at that point, maybe that supervised learning can only recognize one specific cat in one specific context, one specific background, one specific shape. It wasn't very good quite yet. And I think the next step after neural networks was when people started to think, can AI or machines think in language? And I think this was the part at this time with a very famous philosopher known as Noam Chomsky felt as though, no, it's impossible. Language had so much context. It had emotion, it had sentiment, it had all these different things that machines can't pick up. And I think without very, very specific technological developments, large language models, quite simply, were still a figment of people's imagination. But one specific thing that did come out was at the time something called RNNs, or recursive neural networks. What's the difference between a supervised like the previous version of neural networks and recursive neural networks? Quite simply, recursive neural networks had memory. They had something called states. Then when you were moving on to something else, it remembered the context of what happened before it. That way, it can kind of build upon its previous memory, if that makes sense. Maybe let me use an analogy for this. Imagine you're reading a book one sentence at a time. As you read each sentence, you don't forget what you read before. Your memory helps you understand as the story unfolds. In previous supervised learning, imagine that it only memorizes one sentence at a time. And when it opens up a new sentence, it's going to go, what's happening here? I don't know what's happening anymore. But with recursive neural networks, the progress is that what it previously knew, it can keep developing onto itself. And at the time, based on purely recursive neural networks, three people, Geoffrey Hinton, Ilya Sutskever, and I keep on forgetting the third guy, I'm so sorry, I feel bad for him. But the third guy built what is probably the first iteration of a quote-unquote LLM. It's not an LLM like ChatGPT is today, but quite simply, all Geoffrey Hinton was able to do was it created a recursive neural network to predict what the next word should be after a certain word. So say, for example, that you put the word I. This neural network can predict am, and then become Miklos, and then like Sunario, blah, 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 and keep on predicting the next word and the next word based on the previous word and what it memorizes about the word so far. But it had huge limitations. It did not have the context required, and every single time Geoffrey tested this, it always became gibberish after a word like 7 or 8. It became like a long, nonsensical sentence simply because context couldn't hold. And then the internet came in. The internet was a huge innovation in the way that it firstly had an incredible amount of data that was now available to be trained on, and at the same time computation, as in the ability for computers to compute data at a much higher level, was large enough to expand the possibilities of recursive neural networks. I think before this, actually, I forgot to mention that there was a bit of an AI winter between the time Geoffrey Hinton founded the first LLM and this period. But that AI winter was mainly because AI had reached a level where computation could not catch up. But now let's assume that we've reached a time where the computational power has caught up to what AI innovations were at the time. And that gave rise to deep learning. Once again, I'm going to very much oversimplify this, but deep learning was an innovation in capacity. Where supervised learning had maybe one hidden layer, deep learning had multitudes of hidden layers. I think how I can best make this example was the example of the cat earlier once again. Remember how I said in supervised learning, maybe with the cat, it might remember one thing, mungkin dia ingatnya kayak hanya one specific trait, like the shape or something like that. With deep learning, now it has multiple layers to remember a lot, to take in consideration a lot of different contexts. Things like, for example, in the first layer, it could be basic shapes and edges, the outlines of a cat's ears. The middle layer could be about recognizing the combinations of shapes like the face or body types. And maybe finally the final layer puts it all together to identify specific cats, maybe one that had specific patterns, whatnot. Once again, the very simple way to say it was that deep learning was an innovation in capacity. And as a result of this advancement, at the same year actually in 2017, something else came out that made LLMs possible. And it's something Google DeepMind created called the Transformer model. The Transformer model, I think, the most simple way to put it, allows for adaptive reasoning. Previously, the problem with deep learning was that, or language actually, was that there's so much context, right? There's so much possibilities in terms of every language. Like for example, let's use the word bank, okay? The word bank has context in terms of a river. It could be a river bank, but it could also be the bank that has to do with your money, for example. There's so many different words like bank that once again have dual meanings, or maybe beyond dual, many different meanings. And in that way, a deep learning neural network is not, with all its capacity, doesn't have enough compute to consider every single possible word and almost it's almost hard coding it such that for every single word it has a specific context. Gampangnya tuh, once again, despite deep learning having more capacity, it still doesn't have enough capacity. Which is why a transformer model, where that adapts the context, adapts the context of every single connection within the hidden layer, allows for a deep learning model that previously would have needed millions of layers to only need much, much less than that. Because based on context, now a bank will know whether it's bank yang lebih dekat dengan river maupun atau bank based on money. I wish I had images to show it because I think it's a bit harder to grasp the concept of a transformer model, but I hope I did a decent enough job there. And what the transformer creation enabled was actually the creation of OpenAI. So at the time, transformer models were Google's technology. It came out of Google DeepMind. And our folks and friends over at OpenAI saw this development and said, wait, there's enough out there that now we can build a general purpose AI with the technologies possible with RNNs and large language models. Specifically, if I can go back earlier to my story about Geoffrey Hinton and how he made that next word prediction LLM, they decided to run that same experiment, but with the new technologies, specifically transformer models, being the core of it. And OpenAI, founded by Sam Altman, Elon Musk, Ilya Sutskever, the same person who ran that experiment the first time, founded OpenAI and developed GPT-1 and GPT-2. I wish I had a video to show you how GPT-1 and GPT-2 worked, but it was far from GPT-3 or the first version of ChatGPT that came out's capabilities. Specifically, I believe GPT-1, I forgot what it was trained on, but it only had a couple of million contexts compared to the 107 billion contexts that GPT-3 did. And all it was able to do was predict the next word, once again, but at a higher level than what Hinton's experiment did, and specifically it having a bit of something called sentiment analysis at the time. And for GPT-2, it was trained on Reddit's data, actually. So you can imagine why that might have some problems. GPT-2 had a lot of bad opinions, to say the least. And afterwards, I think, let's skip through the story a bit. OpenAI developed, Elon Musk kind of left the company because of some problems. GPT-3 and Instruct GPT came out. GPT-3 was the core model or technology that was created and formulated by OpenAI, whereas Instruct GPT is actually ChatGPT. Instruct GPT was a version of GPT-3 that allowed for interaction from its users, in this case, all the people and all the hype when ChatGPT came out. And that, in a lot of people's eyes, beat the Turing test. For the first time in human history, people thought, have we reached potentially something called artificial general intelligence? And that is to this day still a big debate that hasn't been resolved, but I personally have the opinion that we have not reached AGI. And I think to give a summary so far of what's happened or what I've taught you, I think this is the best way I can illustrate it. Supervised learning is almost like a model or an AI that can only remember one sentence at a time. Transformer model, a recursive neural network allowed it to reach one page because it had enough context and memory to go through one page. A transformer model now was able to take in context from all over the place, almost like from different chapters of a book. So a book. And lastly, ChatGPT or LLMs, I guess, to speak more broadly now, was able to scale the possibilities of transformer models to go from just one book to a whole library of books. I would say that's, once again, my technical friends over in the States will not be happy that I'm explaining it like this, but it's kind of one way to look at it. And I think
OpenAI, I mean, you seem somewhat frustrated with them. You were one of the big contributors early on.
The reason I am the reason OpenAI exists.
How much money did you give them?
I'm not sure the exact number, but it's some number on the order of $50 million. Man, fate loves irony, next level. So I used to be close friends with Larry Page, and I would stay at his house, and we'd have these conversations long into the evening about AI, and I would be constantly urging him to be careful about the danger of AI, and he was really not concerned about the danger of AI and was quite cavalier about it. And at the time, Google, especially after their acquisition of DeepMind, had 3/4 of the world's AI talent. They had obviously a lot of computers and.
Okay, I don't think I wanted to show you the entire video. I just wanted to show you a quick interview to talk about this next bit of the story that I wanted to share with you. So now let's once again to recap. We've reached a stage where ChatGPT has come out, and LLM is a technology that the world knows about. Now I'd like to talk to you about the battle for AI supremacy among specifically the US giants in this case. So for a bit of a story, Elon Musk, right, he started OpenAI alongside, once again, Sam Altman. And Elon Musk himself dedicated $1 billion to the nonprofit that is OpenAI to research and to open source AI technology for all. That was his mission, and his mission also was very human aligned. I think that the story that you just heard right now about Larry Page was another person that he was working with. Larry Page wanted, Larry Page was part of Google, by the way. Larry Page wanted AI for the sake of advancement of technology. Larry Page believed that the advancement of AI technology will benefit everyone, and he specifically had an idea that digital existence versus biological existence, that is human beings, had no differentiation. The advancements of digital, almost, I think, entities, in his opinion, was a given right for them and a given right for humans to develop. Elon Musk disagreed with this at first. I say at first because these people have a lot of differing ideologies over time. Elon Musk disagreed at first, started OpenAI once again as this beneficial AI creation that will be transparent for the rest of the world. However, OpenAI hit a roadblock. I think without going too much details, Elon Musk, Sam Altman, they fell out regarding what the purpose of OpenAI was. And Elon Musk, as a result, left and pulled the $1 billion funding that he gave to OpenAI, and with the reason that he said it was a conflict of interest, because he was also working on AI in Tesla. Jadi sekarang, OpenAI is in a bit of a pickle, because, oh man, it costs about, I think the official math I got at the time when GPT-3 came out, it cost $700,000 per day to run GPT, and that's before you consider all the talent they have to pay for, all the training, additional training, data training that they want to do, and that's before considering the development of GPT-4, which they were still building at the time where they were burning a lot of money. And at the time, as a result of that, I think all of you know that OpenAI decided to do a merger with Microsoft. Microsoft decided to unveil OpenAI in all its glory and say, hey, we own 49% of OpenAI now. And OpenAI went from being this open source idea into being a closed AI loop that served the masses. And at the same time, sorry, I think I enjoy telling the story a bit, so it's kind of a long, complicated story that I decided to just speak rather than have anything visually. Microsoft used this as a way to challenge the rest of the world. Microsoft said, we have AI now. What do you guys have? And when he says you guys, he's talking about the Googles of the world. He's talking about the Metas of the world. And as a result, that became, I would say, culminated in the gold rush of AI we have today. Google rushed the development of their LLM called Bard, which kind of failed spectacularly. I think many of you remember the jokes that came out when Google, I think Bard said, I forgot what Bard said, but it said something that was factually wrong. And among other things, Meta was building Llama 1 and Llama 2 at the time. And all of that brings us to the AI race we have today. There are many more LLMs out there, the likes of Mistral, the likes of Alibaba's, I forgot what it's called, LLM, and a whole other host of things. But I'm going to talk about these 4 main LLMs that have resulted because of this intense competition by all these different industries. I want to talk firstly about OpenAI's GPT-4. GPT-4 is honestly probably the most generally good AI you can think of. Its strengths are, in my opinion, in terms of answering, narrating, it's simple. I think it's good. Google's Gemini, however, has this strength where firstly, it achieved multimodality before GPT-4 did. Basically, it was connected to Google Vision to allow the LLMs to see pictures before GPT-4 did. It also, I believe, had a higher context window when Gemini 1.5 Pro came out. At 1 million, I think it was 1 million tokens compared to GPT-4's 144,000 tokens. So it had innovations in that space. Meta's Llama is really, really good for open source projects for those of you looking for it. If you have the compute to run Llama, it's probably most cost effective. And it also allows the most fine tuning and the most adaptation to your specific use case. And I think I can talk finally about Claude's Anthropic's Cloud, for which I personally use a lot of it, simply because Claude, in my opinion, has the best ability in mathematics and coding reasoning. Now, I think I'll let you guys just all read it for all the different pros and cons that I found out there. I hope that this can be a tool for you if any of you want to go into your LLM, develop your own LLMs, or otherwise use LLM for your startups. But this is the general gist of it. And I think to summarize LLMs as a whole, between these 4, to be honest, you're not going to feel that much of a difference. Using GPT-4 versus Google Gemini, most people won't be able to tell the difference who you're talking to at a given time. What differentiates them with one another is the data they were trained on. You see, now the world is racing for data more than anything. Because, what differentiates GPT-4 model is whether they have the legal access, for example, to be trained on a specific data set. Whether Google, for example, is able to train on a lot of search engine queries. For Meta, they have this ability to search through a lot of social media queries because of their property, so on and so forth. So their ability to fight for data at the moment is the main differentiation that I would say exists between these 4 AIs. Anyways, now that I've given you all a bit of a, crash course in the history of AI, I'd like to talk a bit about, once again, myself. I'd like to talk about firstly the opportunities I see in AI. Firstly, in the fact that the global AI market has incredible amounts of funding coming into it. I believe the expectation is that it would reach $500 billion, not by 2024. I think I wrote that in wrong. Definitely not 2024, but very, very large market cap, and it's growing at a CAGR, or a compound annual growth rate, of 36%. And specifically, I think that there's a lot of specific opportunities here in Indonesia. Not only is Indonesia already invested $200 million into artificial intelligence, it's an emerging market which, under hopefully the leadership of President Prabowo, will grow at an annual rate of 8%. And with all these government initiatives, as well as private investments coming from abroad and internally, AI in Indonesia will evolve. And I think this is the mandate for all of you here today. There's a lot of different opportunities in a lot of different sectors for AI. I see that from the data that I found, there's innovations in healthcare, innovations in finance, retail, e-commerce, manufacturing, education, entertainment, media, and I'm sure so much more. But what I'd like to speak to you all about, and technically the topic of the presentation I have today, is how this transforms education. And now I would like to give you all a bit of a pitch regarding what my company does, a bit of mostly the product and how I ideated it, and how I incorporated AI into my technology. So firstly, I'd like to talk a bit about the problems I see in education. So for context, I worked in 6 countries. I got to work with all sorts of teachers, all sorts of HR people. The United Nations were also a bit of a guidance for me, where they told me, hey, these are some of the problems that we believe are unaddressed in education. So let's go. The first problem is that learning is a terrible investment. What do I mean by that? When you ask companies or lots of different investors, let's go to investors. When you ask them to put money in education, they think of it as a cost, not really an investment. They think, aduh, gue tuh harus bayar untuk uang sekolah, bayar aja leh. Not really like, this money is actually there to develop my company or my people. The second problem that I see is that learning is oftentimes irrelevant. I think I speak this one is targeted more towards corporate education, but I see that a lot of our learning is very, very heavily theoretical. And if I may say something specifically about, I think Asia in particular, our learning is very rote-based. It's very much how well can you memorize these facts that maybe you're not going to be using for the rest of your life. I think it's irrelevant. The third problem is actually a bit of what I said is that learning is too theoretical. And if I can add one more problem again, is that teachers are overburdened. Teachers, from my specific survey, spend up to 40% of their time on administrative tasks. Things like marking your homework, making your homework, marking your essays. I heard that that's the killer of their time. And those are problems that I wanted to solve with artificial intelligence. So I'm going to skip through this actually, because I think I see my time is running short. And I would like to show you a bit of a demo of my product. All right, so I think we're going to go start with Stanford Math. Let's start at planes in 3 dimensions. And I want to talk about how I have firstly overcome, I think, the idea that learning could be too theoretical and a bit, in my opinion, unpersonalized. So here we see Stanford's math, what was it again? What class was this? Math 51 textbook. You'll see that we have a chat content on the right-hand side of the screen. I use a technology called retrieval augmented generation to allow AI to read through all of these texts. And on the left-hand side of the screen, a specific chatbot with an algorithm called deep knowledge tracing that allows my AI to understand 2 things. To understand what you're good at and what you're not so good at. And based on that knowledge, provide that knowledge information to the LLM to give you a more personalized and adaptive learning experience. Let's give it a shot. Let's jump right in. And our AI is going to, based on the previous conversations I had of it, give me an explanation of what it thinks I don't understand, and a question to give me the chance to prove myself whether I understand this context now or not. So in this specific thing, it's about, I have bad eyesight, so I can't even read that, so can you just write an answer, random answer? And the whole idea of it was for you to continuously iterate and have this AI chatbot that adapts to your ability. I think you'll also notice that we've built in a sourcing system. You see the page 17, page 2. I think we've also made it such that this AI can only take information from the right-hand side of the screen, because I think something that we've all been taught growing up is that it's very important to source when it comes to education. We don't want to be learning something from ChatGPT, from Google, simply because we don't necessarily think it's aligned with the learning that we have to do. And I think from an academia point of view, there's a certain amount of control that schools have to have regarding what sort of content you're ingesting as a student, and this is how we moderated that. So I think this kind of does the job. Do you think you can move on to the other tab? Yang satu lagi. The other tab. I think I'd like to go Splunk. But you see, that still doesn't really solve the idea that learning is too theoretical. In my humble opinion, I think that learning shouldn't come only from textbooks or videos, or this idea that it's learning content. In fact, I think that the most valuable things we learn are things we get from real life. Things like an article, things like, I don't know, some random podcast you might see. Or maybe at work is the very work documents that you work with yourself. This here is an example of a test that I did with an American company who had a competitor named Splunk. And their job was to be able to understand what Splunk's technology was in terms of, for example, their spec sheet. How were we better than Splunk? Previously, someone in their sales team had to take in all this information, create a long PowerPoint like I did for you today, and teach them, kekuatan kita tuh ini, kelemahan kita tuh ini, and hope that the person on the other hand, all of you back there, remember that fact, so when you go and try to sell your product, you remember those facts. But to make it a lot more efficient, can you press start learning, please? We made our AI be able to read all this very technical content and teach you this otherwise really boring product in a way an engaging AI tutor would. That way, we made learning relevant in the way that you're learning the most important things, yet personalized in the way that it feels as though you're still being taught something in an engaging manner. So I think that's the whole idea of it. I think you can try, just press start learning. And once again, it's just going to provide the specific information and source specifically to the page where it got its information. Can you press one of those page buttons, please? So you see the blue tab? Yeah, I think it's on. Or the little Wikipedia like sourcing too. Okay, it's fine, no worries. Let's move on to the next feature then, simulations. The next thing that I wanted to also, I think, change in education was that, once again, we were learning too much theory. It's good and all that we're learning all this knowledge, but how do we apply this knowledge in real life? That's the $1 million reason of why we go to school, right? So in here, we created a specific feature called simulation training, where what we did was we took in the theoretical learning you did in the chatbot, the theory itself, and we asked AI to visualize it in real life. So can you press that start learning, please? Quite simply, we talked with our client, in this case an institution. We asked them, hey, what are some common scenarios in which you see this management knowledge applied in real life? And this specific thing was somewhere within their curriculum. It had to talk about how do you manage difficult people. Orang yang maksudnya ada masalah ego misalnya. And here, our AI is going to pretend to be the difficult, egotistic person itself, and you have to apply the learning you had from the theory into real life. What we've seen here, we've seen that for specific management, we've seen a huge increase in in successful management of these types of people, but where we saw a lot of success was actually in sales. Jadi di dunia sales, we had our AI pretend to be your client, and as a result, we were able to shorten the amount of time it took for you to be a salesperson from 3 months to just 1 month. So that's the power of simulation training. I think if you can move on now to, can you press classes? Can DP? Go to coursework. New exam, please. And I think the next problem that I now want to solve was the problem for teachers. Once again, teachers spend so much of their time on things like creating questions or marking, all these different things. And we wanted AI to automate that process. So by simply clicking on a topic, or subtopic in this case, the language you'd like the quiz to be in, as well as multiple choice, short answer, and paragraph answer, as well as the difficulty, we can automate 90% of the work for teachers. Just like that. And automatically, our AI is able to mark everything as well, from multiple choice, short answer, and even long answer questions. In fact, we've actually adapted one of our new features is we've made our AI be able to mark essays so long as the teacher submits the rubric in. And by comparing the specific outputs of the AI's essay marking with the teacher's essay marking, we found that we had an 88% exact score marking rate. So I think now I'd like you to go to reports and go. I think go to Indonesia cybersecurity. Now I want you to select a student for me, just any random student. This is not real students because I can't show you the confidential data. And I want you to scroll down, please. Basically, every single bit of information our AI has collected about you, all your strengths, all your weaknesses across every single topic and subtopic, we wanted to provide this information back to you. Think of it this way. I'm a student myself, right? And I think a bit of a secret, I'm skipping out on school right now to be talking to all of you. And how I am able to keep up in school in many ways is because of my own product. With this product, I know exactly what my strengths and weaknesses are. I know exactly what I need to work on. And therefore, when I go to my midterm exam that I have to get to next week, I'm able to, as efficiently as possible, improve upon my weaknesses and focus on them rather than building on my strengths. And on the other hand, I like to call this feature the MRI of education for teachers. Because for a very long time now, right, especially in a classroom this big, where there are hundreds of you and one of me, when you ask a teacher a question, a teacher has to firstly diagnose you. Dek, kamu ngerti apa sih? Oh, kamu nggak ngerti di sini ya, di sini ya, di sini ya. And only after understanding you can the teacher provide you medicine. Be like, oh, you need to do this, this, and this. With our product, the whole idea was to democratize this, so that teachers can take one look and be like, okay, kamu tuh perlu ini, dan ini. And I think to finally score, we also track things like engagement metrics to see how often you're studying. Not a very fun feature for most of you, but I'm sure more fun for the teachers. And finally, we're also able to track things that are more qualitative in nature. You see, because LLMs allowed for semantic or context-based understanding, now the things that previously were very qualitative in nature that you have to track, things like, for example, I don't know, like leadership, or to what extent are students exemplifying understanding in some specific things. AI is able to map it by connecting it with the specific subtopics you're working with and understand to what extent you're showing this through its interactions. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my EduBeyond product. So to very quickly, I think, finish off my presentation, because I realize now I'm over time. I think with EduBeyond, I've been able to, thankfully, publish a couple of my research. We've worked on multimodal retrieval augmented generation system, as well as a deep knowledge tracing system that allowed for AI to understand the specific students. We're just going to roll through this real quick. Where we were able to publish our papers in IEEE conferences and in Michigan AI Symposium. I'm going to skip through that. We were able to implement in corporate education and academic education. And now, I reached the end. And I want to say, as my parting message, that now is the time for Indonesia. I come here not because I wanted to flex or talk to you all about how awesome startup life is. I came to you all today with an olive branch, with the hope that we, as the young generation of Indonesia, can change the narrative that Indonesia itu belakangan. Indonesia doesn't have the technology. Indonesia doesn't have this or doesn't have that. I come from a position, like you guys, as university students, where I didn't have anything to begin with. But something that I did find was access. I got to the highest level of global politics with the United Nations. I got to work with some of the most incredible people across NASA, DARPA, Stanford University, so on and so forth. And with the technology that I've been able to access, I want to share this with the rest of you all today, such that we can work together to make the Indonesia of tomorrow a better one. Jadi, everyone, please, I want you all to individually contact me, get to know me better, because I think it's by this coalition that we can make our country a better place. Thank you very much.
Oke, thank you Miklos.
Enjoy his presentation. Tadi ajakannya untuk kerjasama lintas global, kita global ya, ITB go global ya, sama-sama sama dosen. Mangga, Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya lanjut lagi.
Waalaikumsalam. Oke, kita beri aplaus sekali lagi. Nggak apa-apa, it's okay. Oke, buat para mahasiswa, saya tahu ketika saya zaman mahasiswa memang ada kecenderungan kita malu untuk bertanya ya, malu untuk speak up tentang apa yang kalian rasakan terkait dengan beberapa kasus gitu ya, karena apalagi di anak ITB itu image-nya adalah kita tuh anak-anak pandai lah, anak-anak pintar lah, jadi kalau bertanya itu adalah sebuah sebuah kayak keengganan, karena image-nya kalau kita bertanya artinya kita tidak tahu dan itu memalukan buat kita. Nah itu sekarang kita ubah ya, jangan berpikir seperti itu. Kita ada waktu 15 menit lagi, ingin mahasiswa ITB di sini terutama ya untuk mengajukan pertanyaan ya terhadap Miklos, apa yang kalian rasakan ataupun apa sih yang perlu kalian ketahui atau kembangkan lebih lanjut terkait dengan ya masa depan kalian, terutama yang gencar adanya teknologi AI ini. Silakan, ada yang ingin bertanya nggak? Silakan. Sebutkan nama, kelas, dipersilakan.
Okay. Let me introduce myself. My name is Barry Presley. I'm from Informatics Engineering, year 2023. I would like to ask about did EduBeyond create their own AI? If so, can you talk a bit about the technical aspects of that AI and maybe how does it compare to other AIs? And also, finally, did you use AI to make that presentation slide?
Okay, I'm going to answer the second question real quick, and yes, I did. I used GPT to formulate thoughts. Who doesn't, you know? Untuk yang pertanyaan pertama dari segi keunggulan EduBeyond, kita tuh bukan bikin AI kita sendiri ya. We still use, for example, OpenAI's API call as well as Claude's API call. We understand, generally speaking, which AI has stronger context in what field, and therefore we use that specific LLM for different tasks. But quite simply, it's not in anyone's interest or smart at all to build your own LLM. But what we did build upon is those two systems that I very briefly touched upon, called the multimodal RAG system, which when we developed that at first, wasn't as open source as it is today. And the second thing that we built was our deep knowledge it's our knowledge tracing system, quite simply. And what knowledge tracing allowed is it allowed a GPT or an LLM to understand the user's level of knowledge and use that as context to adapt its teaching such that it reaches the user's level. Jadi itu yang kita kembangkan.
Menjawab? Oke ya, jadi EduBeyond dari Miklos dan rekan-rekan adalah dia orchestrating banyak aplikasi AI untuk membangun sebuah sistem yang membantu kita, terutama mahasiswa mungkin ya, ataupun para dosen juga, agar pembelajarannya lebih inklusif, ya artinya bisa diakses oleh semua orang dan lebih personalized. Jadi tidak reinventing the wheel. Jadi untuk anak-anak informatika kebetulan tadi ya, kita akan belajar itu, kalian akan belajar itu theoretically. Nah tapi di sini tadi seperti jawaban Miklos lebih ke arah orchestrating all the applications that has been exist, then for specific case that he tried to solve about it, right?
Precisely, yes.
Ada pertanyaan lagi nggak? Silakan. Ke situ. Bahasa Indonesia nggak apa-apa?
Ke bahasa Indonesia nggak apa-apa kok, silakan. Kau juga perlu latihan bahasa Indonesia-nya.
Hello, let me introduce myself. I'm Nigel, and I'm from undergraduate student of informatics engineering. And I would ask about the RAG before, like when creating multiple choice and short answer question with AI, how does EduBeyond ensure the accuracy and reliability of the generated question? Because I know a little bit of RAG, it still comes like hallucination, and how to ensure to minimize the hallucination itself.
Of course. That's a great question. And frankly speaking, it's a very difficult task. I think quite specifically, what we actually did was we created a RAG evaluation platform. So not only did we create the RAG technology itself, we created a RAG evaluation platform to benchmark it compared to other RAGs. And actually, like what I mean other RAGs, I mean like, for example, open source RAGs as well as existing built-in RAGs to the likes of OpenAI and other companies. We found that comparative to a lot of these open source RAGs and as well as the likes of the incumbents, we were able to reach a lower level of hallucination. I believe we had a 98% accuracy rate. And with that, we also provided the sourcing system that you saw when in the chatbot conversation, where we made sure that every single information that the AI outputs has a specific corresponding source. By doing this, we've minimized it to the minimum possible, but you're also right that in this world of RAG and AI, there is still, of course, context to be lost. And I think that's still a fun engineering problem for anyone still solving to solve the problem that is RAG.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ada lagi pertanyaan? Ayo, ini dua-dua dari informatika, yang lain dong, supaya nggak membosankan. Ada dari biologi gitu. Oh, silakan. Maaf, tidak terlihat.
Good morning. My name is Ngani Fatasdayu. I'm from Electrical and Engineering, and I want to ask about the platform. Do you think it will replace teacher, or do you think it still need a teacher to correctly, the 2% remaining from the hallucination?
Thank you for that question. No, by no means am I attempting to remove teachers from the equation. I think in fact the whole idea of this platform was to be used by teachers and students alike as a way to supercharge them. Because every single tool that you saw earlier, for example, getting rid of 40% of a teacher's administrative workload, while giving teachers the data insights into students that would allow them to teach better, we created all of that such that teachers can perform better in real life. Because quite simply, I think what I get here, why I'm so happy to be in person, is because the most important element of education, in my opinion, is the human element. And that's something that we want to augment and therefore reduce as much workload and fat that would kind of cut away from that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oke, ada lagi. Mungkin yang dari online ada nggak? Nggak ada. Oke, ada yang di sini lagi? Nggak kelihatan ya? Ada? Sisi sayap kiri? Ya, silakan. Ayo silakan, silakan. Di sini juga bisa kok. Oh iya, iya, silakan.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Don't need to call me sir.
Good morning, Mr. Miklos. Let me introduce myself. I am Abian. I'm from informatics engineering, just like some of the others before. I want to ask about the education, the implementation of AI in education, because because at the first we know that AI is important, but like how much do we want to teach all the like non-informatics, the information system students about AI? Like how far are we gonna teach them about it? Are we gonna teach all about NLPs? Are we gonna talk about machine learnings to all of them, or just like simple AI stuff to like the other majors around here? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think when I answer this, I want to say and firstly declare that I don't come from a place of academia. I am ultimately an engineer, and I specifically take pride in taking what's out there and making it work as quickly as possible. So in that way, I personally don't believe in reinventing the wheel. I don't think that every person needs to understand how AIs fundamentally work. Like not everyone needs to, for example, develop an LLM, because for most likely 99% of us here aren't going to have a job or specific future in constructing their own LLM. However, I think that everyone should learn how to make use of the technologies that we have at our disposal. Things like, for example, the likes of GPT, or if my personal biases include Perplexity for education. As a student, if you're going to have to research for education, I highly recommend Perplexity because its sourcing ability for relevant sources is much better than that of GPT. And in that way, I think personally, yes, you should. You should learn how to use these technologies that are going to shape our future, that are frankly very, very helpful. Because if that makes you a better person, then that makes society as a whole a better society. That's my personal take.
So does that mean like we're gonna tell all people about NLPs, tell all of them about all of these deep learning stuff, or just simple ones?
Once again, I think it depends on the context of a person. If it's something you're interested in, then by all means, I do not want to be in the way of that. But once again, like I think the context that should be considered is what you're trying to build for your future. I think that everyone should know how to operate something like ChatGPT because it's useful for everything.
True.
But knowing how deep learning works is not necessarily useful for everyone.
Yes.
For example, if I'm a chemistry student, perhaps it's not as applicable to me than if I were a CS student. And in that way, it's contextual of whether everyone should learn that or not. So the answer is not everyone, for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. So, saya ingin menambahkan, jadi ya, untuk anak-anak ITB, minimal kalian tahu bagaimana memanfaatkan AI. Ya, how to do the prompt engineering. Buat informatika, kalian tetap belajar teorinya seperti apa. Oke? Oke, silakan. Ada pertanyaan lagi nggak? Oke. Dari Zoom. While the product's ability to consume raw material and facilitate interactive AI-based conversation with students sound promising, how can we ensure that it doesn't oversimplify or misinterpret complex topics? Okay, potentially leading to inaccurate or misleading informations. Additionally, how can we address concern around data privacy and AI potential biases in teaching? Okay.
Yeah, you guys are keeping it coming with all these technical questions, eh? I should have known this a bit. I think I'll answer the questions one by one. I think the specific system that we made and the specific amount of variance that we allow into AI is practically zero in terms of its creativity. We make sure that the GPT or AI's context is always the context of that of the learning content, and therefore it doesn't teach anything out of scope. That way, we maximize and make sure that what the AI is saying is accurate because it's simply almost saying things that are coming out of your textbook. If your textbook is wrong, then that means our AI will be wrong. But by the same token, because we're assuming that the information being fed in is the most accurate one, considering it's coming from the institution itself, we don't see that as too much of a worry. The other bit of the question was regarding the AI's potential biases in teaching. I think for sure that's a great question, simply because AI does have a traditional bias in teaching. How we've gone about to tackle that is a very, very simple solution. In the back end, or something that you haven't seen, specifically the admin dashboard, when teachers upload the material, we actually allow a prompting window for teachers to direct how the AI should teach. The teachers themselves are the ones that provide the instruction, oh, it should speak in this type of way or this type of way. And therefore, by providing that control to teachers, we have the AI be biased towards how the teachers prefers it to teach, rather than any other type of bias.
Oke, ada pertanyaan lagi nggak? Mungkin ada pertanyaan dari saya, Miklos ya. Ini konteksnya, ini salah satu kritik terhadap penggunaan AI itu adalah potensi mengurangi kemampuan siswa ya dalam mengembangkan keterampilan sosial atau kreatif. Nah, pertanyaannya, menurut Miklos, bagaimana nih EduBeyond ya dalam hal ini membantu siswa mengembangkan keterampilan non akademis ya seperti keterampilan interpersonal atau pemecahan masalah yang mungkin tidak bisa diajarkan secara langsung oleh AI. Ada masukan nggak?
Iya, terima kasih untuk pertanyaan itu, Pak. Jadi mungkin untuk jawaban saya untuk memulainya ya, saya ada sebuah ide. Ini sebenarnya bukan ide yang dari saya sih. Kemarin tahun lalu waktu Sam Altman datang ke Jakarta, dia bilang kata-kata ini tentang pendidikan yang saya sangat setuju ya. Pertama, Sam Altman tuh bilang, AI sekarang tuh seperti kalkulator, ya. Waktu kalkulator keluar dari tahun 90-an, guru-guru matematika di seluruh dunia tuh ketakutan. Waduh, kan ada kalkulator ini, ngapain kita mengajar matematika kan? Tapi apa yang terjadi? Daripada, it's not that math as an education died, but instead it went up another level. Now with calculators, humans equipped with calculators were able to solve math problems that they were not able to solve before. And by the same token, the big idea of AI is, I think AI is almost like that same calculator additive that allows students to perform at a higher level in things like linguistics, perhaps mathematics, science, so on and so forth. Tapi untuk pertanyaan spesifiknya, gimana EduBeyond itu bisa mengatasi problem dari segi, gimana itu bisa menaikkan the personalized itu ya. I think two ways. The first bit that I want to do is I wanted EduBeyond to always adapt to your level. Quite simply, all sorts of learning is contextual. If I'm saying something that is out of context, like for example in a different language, none of you here would be able to understand despite my material being accurate. In the same way, when a textbook only has one interpretation, the interpretation that you read it, and it doesn't necessarily hit with you, then you're lost because you don't understand it. I wanted an AI that can translate any sort of information, be it as technical, boring, difficult as it may be, to be able to be understandable by any one of you here today. And on the other level, I also wanted AI to be able to test you in a different way than a test is able to prepare you. And that's also why I did simulation training. I wanted to allow you to prove to yourself that not only do you have the knowledge, but also you know how to solve real life problems with the knowledge you have. Dengan begitu dari segi misalnya dari guru maupun dari perusahaan yang punya EduBeyond, itu kelihatan kemampuan kamu itu asli, bukan teoritis.
Thank you Miklos. Nih sebelum saya tutup, saya ingin tanya, Miklos, salah satu misi Miklos datang ke sini itu sebetulnya adalah untuk menjaring kalian-kalian yang masih full of energy ya, untuk bersama-sama komit bekerja ya terkait dengan bidang AI ini. Nah saya ingin tanya, kalau dari mahasiswa ITB nih kurang lebih, kalau diminta atau ditanya siapa yang ingin bergabung untuk komit dalam pengembangan AI ini terutama untuk Indonesia ya, think globally, do locally, ada raise your hand.
Waduh.
Oke. Ini jangan-jangan mahasiswa informatika semua ya rata-rata aja. Anyway, thank you so much. So, before I close it, so I would like you to all of us make applause for Miklos.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Semoga studium general kita hari ini bisa menginspirasi kita semua ya, terutama kalian generasi muda untuk tetap berkembang dan terus berusaha untuk maju dan buktikan bahwa kita masyarakat Indonesia atau mahasiswa Indonesia itu mampu dan akan bisa terus berkembang untuk membuat masa depan yang cerah. Sekali lagi, ITB Udah loyo. Oke, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Kepada Bapak Miklos Sunario, kami mohon untuk tetap di tempat. Selanjutnya, Sekretaris Institut Teknologi Bandung akan memberikan piagam penghargaan kepada Bapak Miklos Sunario. Kepada Profesor Wijaya Martokusumo, kami silakan. Baiklah hadirin, dengan demikian Studium Generale pada hari ini telah selesai. Terima kasih atas perhatian hadirin dalam mengikuti acara ini. Selamat siang, salam sehat selalu.